Good morning. Today's message comes from Samuel, the first book of Samuel, chapter 3, verses 1 through 20. In this part of Samuel, we hear the story of Samuel first hearing God's voice. Samuel was asleep in the temple, and basically God spoke to him. And he basically said, "Here I am, Lord." And he went out and he woke up Eli and said, "Eli, what did you require of me?" Because Eli was his teacher at the time. And Eli's like, "I didn't call for you, go back to sleep." This happened a couple times. And then finally, Eli, he finally put two and two together and said, "You know what? Next time that you hear a voice, I want you to scream out, here I am. What do you require of me? Or what do you ask of me?" And so, sure enough, Samuel went back to bed. And when he woke up again by this voice, he answered that way. "Here I am. What do you want of me?" God then spoke to him and said, "This is what I have for you. This is what I want you to convey." And he told Samuel about what's going to happen to Eli. And Eli was, of course, his teacher, and Samuel was very obedient to Eli. So basically, God lays out the plan, or the starting of the plan for Samuel's ministry. And sure enough, after that, he goes to talk to Eli. And Eli's like, "So did you ask what was required of you?" And yes, I think it was God speaking to me. And then Eli's like, "I want you to tell me what was said." And Samuel was hesitant about it. So Eli said, "Just be honest." And Samuel said everything word for word. And Eli appreciated his honesty. There's a couple things we can glean from this story. First is basically there are times where we are spoken to, and it's up to us to decide whether or not we are going to respond. God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes people who God speaks to, they are hesitant about answering the call, whether it's they're afraid of what people might think of them, whether it's something that may go against the grain. Second, sometimes as people we forget or we don't really understand that it's God speaking to us. So we need that person to point out to us whether or not it is truly God speaking to us. In Samuel's case, Eli put two and two together and he figured out it was probably God talking to him. Another example of this, basically when about 10 to 15 years ago, I was working with some people about Christianity, trying to get them to get more comfortable with their faith. And at the time, I was not feeling good. So one of the people I was talking to about Christ told me about this minister, this emerging preacher out of St. Louis. And this is what the person would watch because he was not comfortable going to church. So one day I was sick and I turned it on, and this guy spoke volumes. You could tell that God had blessed this person. And basically, as his ministry grew, because I followed him time to time, all of a sudden one day he comes in and he's like, "God spoke to me. God wants me to go to this exotic locale and build an extension down there." And sure enough, within a year, he was not at his main campus. He was not at the other emerging branch that was in another part of the city. He was spending the majority of his time down at this exotic locale. And we noticed that his clothes started getting more expensive. In fact, what he wore on his wrist cost more than what my house costs right now. And he kept saying, like recently, he's like, "God bless me, he heard my prayers that I wanted my children to go to a private school and receive the best education possible." And, he showed a video of his kids and they have everything that they want. But the thing is, was he really answering God's call, or was he answering another agent's call for himself? Because his first campus, they're really not receiving his ministry. Yeah, granted, they watch it on a screen, and his associate pastors are still running that church. But was he really answering God's call when he decided to go down south and started to accept money from these billionaires and started doing all this stuff? So he probably needed somebody to question him. Is this what God really wants you to do? Or is this what somebody else wants you to do? The third thing that I got out of this reading from Samuel is the fact that sometimes we are presented with information that we don't want to tell people. Again, Samuel, he was told by the Lord to tell Eli that basically that's it, no more. After today, his power over the people was going to diminish, and his descendants would not have the luxury that he had, which Samuel did. And of course, Eli begrudgingly accepted it because he probably knew it was the truth. That was God's will. Sometimes we're going to be put in situations where we have to tell people that we care about that what they're doing, what they're saying, it's not appropriate. It's not right. It's not what God wants them to do. Put on the armor of God. Be brave when you do that. Because basically, sometimes we have to be blunt with the people to let them know what God wants from them. So, in closing, I thank you guys so much for paying attention. May God bless each and every one of you. And as you go throughout your day, throughout your week, may you take the lessons we learned from the first book of Samuel, chapter 3. Be aware of God calling you. If you're like Eli and you know that somebody's calling God, they don't understand it, point it out to them. And be honest, right? Honesty is the best policy. So I thank you guys so much for paying attention and watching my video. May God bless each and every one of you. Until next time, goodbye.